Hello, and welcome to our session today on temporary accounts, the project formerly known as IP masking. My name is Maddie. I am an attorney for the Wikimania Foundation working in privacy. My co-presenter is Naharka, a product manager in the Trust and Safety product team, which is the team leading out on the work for temporary accounts. Today's presentation is a sequel of sorts to our presentation at last year's Wikimania. Some of the information we cover will be the same to make sure that anyone who missed last year's session can approach the topic with the same background information. Our rationale for the project remains the same, for example, whereas our approach has some key updates in terms of who can access IP addresses. We also have some important development updates since last year that Naharka will cover. After this pre-recorded portion, we will have time for your questions and our answers live. Please use the Etherpad to record questions you have as the session progresses, so we can be sure to cover them in the Q&A. So why temporary accounts? As you probably already know, on the Wikimedia projects, anyone can edit. There are two basic ways people can edit. The first is by logging into an account with a username of their own choosing. The second is editing while not logged into an account, with edits attributed to an IP address. These different paths to editing come with different ways our sites handle IP addresses of our users. For editors who are logged in, their IP addresses are only stored for 90 days and are not shared with the public. For editors who are not logged in, their IP addresses are stored forever and shared with the public. This has been the status quo for a long time. We detail this in our privacy policy and data retention guidelines. Here are some screen captures of how IP addresses are shown to the public. On the left is a user talk page for a shared IP address. On the right is an IP address shown in a page's edit history. So why is this a problem? IP addresses are personal data. We cover this in our privacy policy, that they can be used to personally identify people. And how we collect, use, and share personal data is subject to various laws. We've also seen over the past few years that these laws are growing. There's more and more of these laws being proposed, being enacted, and privacy is an increasingly regulated space. Our current status quo presents various risks, both for these legal risks, as well as surveillance risks to our users and falling short of our user expectations. We regularly hear from users who are surprised that their IP address is logged in this way and shown publicly, even though there are warnings on our sites that it's going to happen. While addressing those risks, we also have to consider what our users need to protect their projects. IP addresses have been an invaluable tool when dealing with harassment, abuse, and vandalism. We don't want to make any changes without giving the communities appropriate mechanisms to handle this impact. Ultimately, the project has been working towards a new system, though, in which our editor data is handled with greater consistency. For editors who are not logged into an account, this means their IP addresses will not be stored forever, and the IP addresses will no longer be publicly available. This is what will shift. This is where we shift into a high-level overview of how that will be achieved, covering what temporary accounts are and who will have access to the IP addresses of these users. Temporary accounts are a new type of identity on our sites, a new user account type that will replace IP editing. Temporary accounts will have an automatically created username and will be tied to a cookie on the user's browser, lasting as long as the cookie lasts. Users who are not logged into a permanent account will no longer have their edits attributed to an IP address publicly. Multi-IP addresses can be linked to one temporary account. Users who meet certain criteria will still be able to reveal IP addresses so they can complete their anti-vandalism and anti-harassment work. The criteria for seeing these IP addresses is outlined in the next slides. Certain users will have access to these IP addresses for temporary accounts on individual or local Wikimedia projects in order to protect those projects. Check users and oversights will have local access rights, for example, by default. Admins and bureaucrats will be able to opt in for access. And for patrollers who opt in, they will also be able to access these IP addresses as long as they've made at least 300 edits to the project, to that local project, and their account is at least 6 months old. This part is where we kind of shift from our presentation last year. There's now a global access option. Rather than lumping everyone in who needs global access and local access, the team has been working on a global opt-in. Because certain users will have access, and they need to have it on a global basis in order to prevent cross-wiki abuse effectively. So stewards, ombuds, and staff will have global access by default. The user groups of global SysOps, global rollbackers, and abuse filter maintainers and helpers will have access through a global opt-in. Check users and oversights will also have access to a global opt-in in addition to their automatic local access. That's a lot of details, but you can refer back to them at any time to the access policy page listed on this slide. It is on the Foundation Governance Wiki website as well, and that is that. So the IP addresses will only be accessible to users who meet those requirements. This does not include public access. Users who do not qualify can still use the IP info feature as long as they are at least auto-confirmed. Naharka will cover a little bit more about the IP info feature in her slides. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Niharika Kohli, and I am the lead product manager working on the temporary accounts project. I'm here on behalf of the Trust and Safety product team, and I'll give you a walkthrough of the work we've done so far and what's coming next. Before we go into the different designs here, I wanted to highlight some key design principles we kept in mind while designing the temporary editor experience. We wanted to make sure that temporary accounts have access to the same editing experience as current IP editors do. We don't want this transition to feel jarring or disruptive to them. But at the same time, we wanted temporary accounts to feel ephemeral, short-lived. We don't want editors to feel that by creating an account, they're getting a permanent identity. These accounts are temporary by nature. They're tied to a cookie, like Maddie mentioned earlier in this presentation, and they persist as long as the cookie does. So that could go away at any time. We also highlight incentives for creating an actual account and nudging users towards it by offering them features like watch list and preferences if they do sign up for an account. Uh, we also wanted to make it very clear that by creating a temporary account, we're in no way saying that you need to give us your information or you need to create an account. Anybody can still edit. This is a temporary account that is automatically created. We're still not asking anybody for their details to hold. And then lastly, we want to make sure that there is guidance and education about the reasons for this change. This is done for enhancing user privacy, and we want to highlight the changes. This slide talks about the temporary editor experience. Upon the first edit after temporary accounts rollout, an IP editor, non-logged in editor would be told that they are going to end up creating a temporary account after their edit. And going forward, their edits will be attributed to this temporary account. There will also be a help link for them to know more about it. Another thing to note in the second screenshot here is the gray banner on the top. Temporary editors will see this gray banner on top of their screen, which highlights their temporary account username. And there will also be a pop-up for the first time they edit. The format chosen for temporary account username is tilde followed by the year of creation of the temporary account followed by an auto-incrementing number. This format came about after a lot of discussion and deliberation with community members. And the reason for including the year is so that it is an easy identifier for how old a temporary account might be. And so if it's worth engaging with them, blocking them, and so on. Temporary accounts do expire, so after a point in time, temporary accounts, a given temporary account may no longer be active. In the following slides, I will be talking about all of the changes we have made to enhance the patrolling workflows, especially when it comes to temporary accounts. So IP reveal is arguably one of the most important workflows. A subset of users will have access to reveal IP addresses, as mentioned by Maddie earlier in this presentation. After they check a preference, opting into reveal IP addresses, users will be able to see this show IP button next to temporary accounts. I want to mention that some users will have this access by default and no longer don't need to check that preference. So once revealed, an IP, a temporary account IP will persist as revealed across the entire website for a period of 24 hours. This action of revealing will be logged for anti-abuse purposes. Blocking temporary accounts. Blocking temporary accounts will work very similar to how blocking an account, user account, or IP range works. In the special block form, an admin will be able to look up a temporary account just as easily as any other username. Blocking temporary accounts will block just that one temporary account, and this will be a cookie-based block. IP info feature. So this is a feature that you might have heard about previously. We developed IP info as a means to give our patrollers some key information about an IP address that they're looking into without needing to reveal the IP address itself. And the intention is that this at-a-glance info box gives them all the details they need without needing to tap into different IP address information websites, without consulting third-party sources. They get what they need right here in the interface. For IP info, we collaborated with a couple of major data sources to find the best possible information. The first column there is location, ISP, ASN, organization, and IP version. This data is coming from MaxMind, which we found to be substantially better than other data sources regarding this. SPUR is a leading data source on bad actors and blacklists, and that we were able to tap into SPUR to find out information about when an IP address might be displaying some suspicious behaviors, using proxies, understanding the connection type, and understanding how many users may be on a given IP address at a given point in time. And lastly, we are getting some on-wiki information from local blocks and contributions. There are also going to be links to external tools that could be useful. Global user contributions. This has been a long outstanding Patroller request. Global user contributions is a feature that is maintained on ToolForge currently. The idea is that one can plug in a username or IP address and at a glance see edits that made by or contributions made by that actor across all of our production sites. This feature is incredibly useful when it comes to cross-wiki anti-vandalism patrolling. As part of our work on temporary accounts, we are planning to build special global contributions inside of MediaWiki. It'll work very similar to how GUC works as of today. You'll be able to plug in an IP address, a temporary account, an IP range, or even a full account, and get their contributions for the past 90 days on the special page itself. This work is still being planned out, so any feedback, any input is very welcome. And more. With the amount of work we've done in temporary accounts, we have managed to fix and overhaul and improve a lot of things along the way. I'll quickly run down this list. Global blocks. We recently implemented the ability to globally block user accounts. This replaces the age-old system of global locking. We're also in the process of implementing global blocks as we speak. We introduced rate limits for temporary account creation, and we also added a way to filter users based on user type so that users, abuse filter maintainers can set filters against temporary account users. We also added a new special page called Special IP Contributions to allow users to view contributions from IPs and IP ranges going forward. We overhauled special deleted contributions as part of this work. We have updated all the APIs to return data specifically about temporary users where needed. And we have also updated recent changes and watchlist filters to filter out temporary users. There's more that we could cover in this slide deck, but if you're interested in a bigger deep dive on this work, feel free to visit our project page. Roadmap. We recently completed TestWiki deployment last month. You can now head over to TestWiki and try out the temporary editor experience. Users with the right permissions can also view some of the patrolling workflows that we've already implemented. Please note that work is still in flight and some things may not work as expected. We want to finalize feature implementation on this work by October 2024. We are expecting fellow Wikimedia Foundation teams to update the software they own that depends on temporary accounts by November. We also want to do a pilot with a small set of wikis in November. These are going to be small to medium-sized wikis with low IP editing impact. And lastly, we want to make sure we completely deploy to all production wikis by sometime in 2025. This is an estimated timeline. This is subject to change, but our hope is to wrap this work up sooner rather than later, because this is a legal threat to and also a privacy risk. I want to emphasize that Temporary account rollout will be slow and careful. We want to work very closely with the communities to minimize disruption to existing workflows. Our intention is to gather community feedback at every step and adapt our plans to make sure we meet the community's needs. All right, and that is everything. Thank you so much for coming. Please drop your notes and questions on the Etherpad. I will be adding any links that are helpful also on the Etherpad, and we'll be taking some questions. Thank you so much for the facilitators in the room.